What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Forward Progress, Week 11, Best Bets Edition or Worst Bets Edition, however you want to look at it. Part of the Hammer Betting Network presented by Fanduel. I'm Rob Pizzola, joined by Suma, Judah, Hitman. Today, we're breaking down 9 different NFL games on this week's card. Hopefully, you'll cash on this week's slate. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to hit that like button, share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel as well so you never miss an episode. But let's get right into it. First and foremost, no Suma Tetris hat today. Plus 265. Does not cash here. But he does have the fresh haircut, as do I. But producer Jason did not acknowledge that behind the scenes afterwards. He just said, Suma, very nice haircut. I mean, I'm balding. I'm losing my hair. I get it. Doesn't even look like I cut it. But I'm also sporting the fresh haircut today. What hasn't been fresh, though, are the picks on this show. After a few weeks going 500, we went 0-4 last week. Let's be real for a second here. This season hasn't been kind to us on the best bets front. We know the results haven't met our own standards. We don't want to brush that under the rug. It's only fair to acknowledge that and recap every single week. I'm aware that I'm going to sound like a tout here, but even in a rough season for these specific bets, there's still real value in what we're doing here. We're breaking down the process. We're analyzing matchups. We're helping you make more informed decisions. Wins and losses are part of the ride. Long term, it's that process that ultimately makes the difference, especially when we're dealing with small sample sizes. Hitman has been killing it on the Saturday prop show, even though he lost this past weekend and one guy let him know about it on Twitter, would not drop it. We've also been collectively killing it on the live watch-alongs this year. I'm positive we're delivering valuable content. If I wasn't positive, I would just stop doing it. So stick with us. Keep questioning us. That's important. But also try learning alongside with us as well. Betting's a long game. We're here to improve together. And if you're back for another week, thank you very much for tuning in. I see a lot of familiars in the chat. Hello, Ekshesh. You almost cashed that Broncos money line on Sunday morning. Best bet in the chat. I don't forget. Like an elephant, I don't forget. Thank you, Patrick, for believing in us. Let's go. First game this week. Packers and Bears. Shane Waldron, he gone. He's out of the mix. Players like DJ Moore completely trashing him today. Bears money. Looking at the line at FanDuel, we're down to 5.5 now. Total has been bet down consistently this week. Part of that weather, some of that might be related to the Bears' offensive line issues as well. We sit at 40.5 right now on the total. Hitman, I'm going to open up with you here because I know you have thoughts on this total.
Yeah, leaning towards the under, albeit I liked it better at 41 earlier today. But Chicago has the least amount of 10-plus yard plays in the NFL. There's talk from the offensive players, allegedly, about replacing Caleb Williams. Coming out of the bye, the Bears have allowed a 62% pressure rate to Washington. Washington was 13th in pressure rate before that matchup. They allowed a 42% pressure rate to Arizona, who was 30th in pressure rate coming in, and a 39% pressure rate to New England, who was 29th coming into that game. The offensive line has cluster injuries. Caleb Williams is holding on to the ball way too long. I'm just not sure how fixable this is in 1 week. Thomas Brown, despite like a lot of times you'd say like, oh, this team's going to get a boost with the new play caller week 1. Maybe they get a boost efficiency, but one thing I am confident in is that they're probably going to play slower. The Bears currently rank 3rd in pace over expected, and they're 2nd in neutral no huddle rate. Thomas Brown played very slow with Carolina after Carolina played with a decent pace before he took over. Also, when it comes to pass rate, Carolina was 10th in neutral pass rate. And then when Thomas Brown took over, they chopped that down by 10%. So I'm just not sure how much of a boost I expect for the Bears offense. And then Green Bay on the other side, like Jordan Love right now is 28th in completion percentage over expectation. Green Bay, the last month since he came back from injury, is 28th in pace. They're bottom 3rd in the league in pass rate over expectation. Plus, you get the potential weather. It looks like it will probably be fine, but there's a chance that it's a little bit less than ideal with the winds in Chicago. Spank odds is going off as I'm talking. And,
limit increase.
And lastly, I'm looking at some props with the play caller change. There's been a lot of frustration from DJ Moore. There's been a lot of frustration from Cole Kmet. Been a lot of frustration with a lot of these Chicago playmakers about who's not getting the ball. So just interested to see in the prop market this week if there's any talk about getting some of these guys involved, what they might possibly do to counter Caleb Williams holding on to the ball so long. Do they have more quick passes this week? I don't know what they're going to do, but you'd have to think theoretically there will be some changes to the play calling. But one thing I am confident in is that Chicago probably plays slower coming in this week. So, I would lean towards the under 40.5.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one, Hitman. The only issue I have is that obviously 41 being a key number when it comes to betting NFL totals here. And we've seen this been bet down quite a bit. So I actually still have value on this under in this game for a lot of the reasons that Hitman mentioned. I think Chicago will play slow. I don't know that their offense is just going to be able to be fixed overnight either. I think a lot of these issues are obviously offensive line related, but also some of it's Caleb Williams related as well, where he just, when he's pressured right now, seems like he's taking a sack every time. He can't take stuff that's easy right now either. So I'm in agreement with you. I just don't know on the market timing for this in particular, because whenever we get a total that's bet down, especially through a key number, we often see buyback the other way. So for me, I am still looking for a Packers Bears under here. I'd like to buy it at 41. Potential inclement weather as well. That ruins the explosives for the Packers. Now, it's not like it's a foregone conclusion. You're looking at the weather in Chicago this week. It's kind of mild. It'll be windy, some rain in the forecast as well. But the Packers are a team that relies on explosive plays. They just don't success rate you to death like the Chiefs do, as an example. So leaning towards the under in this game as well. Suma, I know that you particularly had some thoughts on the side of this one.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards the Packers. I think if Braxton Jones and Donald White end up playing, number might maybe get a little bit better. They are back at practice, but I'm not sure whether we should put all the blame on Shane Waldron and that offensive line. I think that Caleb Williams also has a lot of stuff to do with that offense being so bad right now. Both OTs last week, Matt Pryor and Larry Burrow, they had actually decent grades. I think that the guards were bad, but the Patriots are not a great defense at generating pressure. But I think that Caleb just holds onto the ball way too long. He cannot deal with the pocket. And then on top, I think that the scheme doesn't give him enough answers and easy layups. And he also sometimes refuses to take the easy layups if or when they are there. So I think it's a bad combination, but I would also put some of the blame or a lot of the blame on Caleb Williams. The Bears O-line, when you look at pass blocking metrics, like they aren't at the bottom in like any metrics. They are hovering around average to below average. Yes, they had some injuries going on, but I just don't think that it's all the offensive line and that it was all Shane Waldron. And like Hitman has said, it's tough to fix it within 1 week, especially also starting on Tuesday when the game plan has already started. So not really sure. I am expecting a completely different or revamped Bears defense. And also we can make the case that the Packers defense, at least according to season-long metrics, has been a better unit than what they faced over the past 3 weeks. So I just don't think that we will get a much better Bears offense this week. On the other side, Packers of the bye week, I think the Bears defense has not been great this year, and they have also played one of the easiest schedules. They have maybe played 2 offenses that I would strongly consider above average. That is Arizona and Washington. Washington was the game where Jane Daniels played the first game off of his injury. They also had the Rams offense earlier in the year, but they were absolutely riddled with injuries. So that's not the current Rams offense. So I think Packers might just do enough on offense to get this one home. Also, like the under a little bit, I just think this is a game where the Packers are simply better on all phases of the game.
Just adding one thing to this game, Jaquan Brisker has already been ruled out again for this upcoming week with his concussion. So he's got a pretty serious one there that they keep ruling him out early on in the week for the past couple of weeks. We'll move on here to the Rams and the Patriots. Last time we saw the Rams was in prime time, where they didn't look very good, especially offensively against that Miami Dolphins defense. Subsequently, we have seen a little bit of New England money since the opener. Not a ton, obviously moving through 5 or off of 5. Not a substantial move, but nonetheless, we're sitting at Rams minus 4.5 at Fanduel. Total in the game is 43.5. Judah, let's start with you for this game in particular. Do you think the Rams will bounce back in this spot?
Yeah, I think this is. We talked all of you guys mentioned the last week's game about the with the Bears and Patriots. I think being more a function of Chicago. We even talked about that. Kind of looking at that game last week, that this was a Caleb Williams phenomenon. And I am certainly high on Drake May. I've talked about this many times, but I think the market has caught up a bit too much here. And when you look at the matchup angles at play, the Rams were really beaten by the Miami pass rush, which has been the strength of this defense for the whole season. They've been pretty bad defensively, but where they have been good is in their ability to generate quick pressure. They've been kind of top 10 for most of the season. The Rams are healthier on the offensive line. I don't think that New England's going to be able to sustain that. They've been a bottom 5 pass rusher. They also traded away their best pass rusher. So I do not think that they will be able to replicate the same success they had last week. And on the other side of the ball, the Patriots play a ton of man coverage. They do not have the personnel. Christian Gonzalez is a terrific corner. They do not have the personnel to match up with Nakua and Kupp for the Rams. I think they should have their way passing the ball. New England has been relatively vulnerable against the run as well. I think as this offensive line gets healthier and gets some more reps in, right? It's one thing for 2 guys to return from injury in week 1. Continuity matters on the offensive line. We can anticipate them getting better as the season goes along. And all of that, I think, points to the Rams here. 4.5 is just not enough. I like Drake May. It's one thing when we're betting on him as a 6.5 point dog against Chicago. It's a whole other ball game against the Rams, who I think are in a completely different tier.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that because I think now the Rams are valuable as well. Again, not a big market shift here, but I think the price is already short at open. And now that we've gotten even more money on the Patriots, I'm looking at the Rams in this game. The Patriots offense gets to third down on almost 56% of their series this year. There's only one team worse in the entire league. That's Chicago. They just don't have a lot of explosive plays. And I'm a huge fan of Drake May, but behind this offensive line, without weapons, you look at every single start since Drake May has taken over for the Patriots, they've had a 43% success rate or less. And that's including against some bad defenses like the Jacksonville Jaguars. I echo a lot of what Judah said here. I think it's a good matchup for the Rams offense where their receivers can get separation. I think the price is a little bit short now. And I also think the Rams defense is very underrated at this point relative to the way they were being talked about earlier in the year, like a bottom 5 defense. They're getting pressure. They're healthy now with a full complement of corners. I think we've seen that in recent weeks. So I think this price has been adjusted a little bit too much. Suma, I know you have thoughts on this one as well. Are you making it a sweep here, or are you making a case for the Patriots?
A sweep, and also including the chat. I think everyone that likes the Rams this week. Gotta make sure that's not a best bet for us. I think I don't have too much to add here. I think that the Pats defense has looked much better in recent weeks than they truly are against guys like Caleb and Rudolph. Every time they face a decent quarterback, maybe outside of Joe Burrow week 1, they got torched. And I think this will be the same case against the Rams. Matthew Stafford is struggling mightily under pressure this year compared to last seasons. And the Pats defense just doesn't generate a lot of pressure. It was basically just that they played Caleb Williams last week. So expecting the Rams finally to be better when running the ball, and also think that there will be a lot of space for them through the air to operate.
Okay, we'll keep it moving here. AFC North matchup, one that a lot of people are looking forward to this week. It's the Baltimore Ravens heading out on the road to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are also on fire right now, coming off a big game over the Washington Commanders. Big win over the Washington Commanders. Looking at the market in this game right now, we see that Baltimore is a 3-point favorite on the road, minus 120 pretty much across the board. Total in the game is 48.5. Judah, I'll lead it off with you here. This is a game where you want to target some alternate lines.
Yeah, I think the Steelers are naturally going to be a very volatile team this season. I think that's a function of Russell Wilson's play. I think it's especially true this week because the market is kind of at a little bit of an impasse, saying like, how good is Russell Wilson? He's fourth in EPA per play thus far. Is that going to sustain itself, or is it going to regress closer to kind of the averages we've seen basically from the 3 previous seasons for Russell Wilson? That's, I think, kind of central to this game. And I think that we're bound to see some regression from Russell Wilson. If you kind of look at his statistical profile and you kind of break down what's changed, it's kind of the same. He still is well below league average in his pressure to sack rate. His ADOT isn't that much different. His time to throw is not that much different. Even if you break up his EPA in most categories, it's effectively the same, with one notable exception. His EPA throwing deep is 1.4 expected points per play. At least in the database that I'm looking at, that is by far the best season if it were to sustain itself by nearly 0.2 points. Even if it's directionally accurate, even if Russell Wilson is really good, and as I see in the comments, Russell Wilson is a great deep passer. We would expect that to have kind of, you would see that in the glory days of Seattle, but his best season there was like 0.7 EPA per play, which is still an incredible mark. I think the point is that the magnitude that Wilson is getting from these deep passes is bound to regress. He's adding zero value. His EPA is quite literally zero on non-deep throws. And even if it is good, I do not think it's going to sustain itself to the degree we've seen, which is Russell Wilson as kind of the quarterback with the 4th best EPA per play. And on the flip side, I think there's a lot of value kind of in the pricing of the Steelers defense, which is a terrific unit. They were incredible against Washington, but they did lose Alex Highsmith. That is a massive, massive injury on the for them at edge. And Lamar Jackson, the way he's playing right now, the matchups are almost irrelevant. His ability to create and scramble has been by far the best of his career. It's leading to his best results. I think this is a spot where Baltimore can win with margin.
Interesting take there. I echo a lot of what Judah said here as well. I talked about this game with Clive on Sunday night when we break down the openers at Fanduel, and this opened 45.5, and the market making books kind of opened this at 46, and it's been one-way money to the over, and that was what we were looking at, on Sunday night. There's some injuries here to talk about. Alex Highsmith, as Judah mentioned. Also on the Ravens defensive side, Kyle Hamilton, who is, I think, trending towards playing at this point, but a very key injury to monitor. Typically, whenever you get a total move like this, you tend to see some buyback, and this is probably the peak on the over. My opinion is that somebody will probably bet the under in this game, and I would like to bet the over again at lower prices if we get there. I know you'll look at past history between these two teams. Everyone's going to look at box scores from previous years, and it's going to be the same topics of conversation, right? It's always a field goal game. It's always a low-scoring game. Mike Tomlin owns Lamar Jackson. This is a completely different Ravens offense at this point this year. They're generating 7 yards per play. They generate tons of explosives. They can run the ball. They can pass the ball. You take away Highsmith on the other side, that's a blow to them. Potentially a cornerback injury, a starting cornerback injury for the Steelers as well. We'll see if Dante Jackson ends up playing as well. And on the other side, you have Pittsburgh, who's now generating explosives through the air as well. So to me, this is an opportunity to bet the over. I'm big on market timing. I don't think this is the best time to get in on this, but I do foresee another opportunity to buy the over in this Steelers and Ravens game. Before we get into our next game, football's in full swing. There's no better place to get in on the NFL action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. You just place any $5 bet, you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. You can use your bets on spreads, props, live bets, including the To Catch a Pass market, where we fired a ton of live bets on our last watch along, over-unders, and so much more. I love FanDuel as a sportsbook. They have great betting options, lots of derivative markets, lots of player props. arguably the best in-game experience in the entire market as well. So visit fanduel.com/forward progress. Download America's #1 sportsbook. That's fanduel.com/forward progress. You must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-979-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts. 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Many more games to cover on today's show. Smash that like button down below. If you're watching on Twitter, where we're now streaming again, and you want to get in on the conversation, hop over to our YouTube channel. The chat is off the hook in real time. Lots of debates on these games going on as we talk about them. So come on over to our YouTube channel. You can get in on the chat as well. Cleveland Browns, coming off of their bye week, heading out on the road to take on the New Orleans Saints. The Saints with a pretty lucky win last week, we would say, in the sense that box score metrics would have indicated that they probably should have lost by about a touchdown, but they pull it out regardless. They're dealing with several injuries right now. We see the Saints as a -1.5 point favorite, -105 at FanDuel. Early money was on the Browns, a little bit of buyback on the Saints. Total in this one has been bet up to 44.5. Suma, we'll start with you on this particular game. Saints, Browns, who you liking and why?
I love the Browns this week. This is a great spot for them from a matchup perspective. With Derek Carr back, the Saints played the Panthers last week or 2 weeks ago, and then the Falcons. Two of the worst pass rushers in the game right now. But it's still very true that the Saints have one of the worst, a bottom 3 offensive line. This is going to be one of the worst pass blocking matchups of the week in this one. The Browns defensive line, even without Za'Darius Smith now, is still very, very good. The Chargers O-line 2 weeks ago was under constant duress all game, and it was just the Justin Herbert magic that survived that game for the Chargers, I would say. Derek Carr, I think he might just get eaten alive in this game. I just don't see how the Saints will be able to move the ball here. This is also still one of, or not still, but now one of the worst, I think we can say the worst wide receiving groups in football right now. Last week, Marcus Valdes-Scantling had the most routes, followed by Kevin Austin. They played a lot of 12, 13 personnel sets, but I just don't see how they move the ball. Even against the Falcons, a game they luckily won, as you explained. They had a success rate of 36%, and it was basically just 2 or 3 big plays down the field to Marcus Valdes-Scantling. I think the Saints offense will just look very, very bad in this one. Browns defense should be all over them. And then on the other side, the Jameis Winston revenge game. I think the Browns offense should get something going on the ground. Saints have one of the worst rushing defenses in the league. Also got hammered on the ground last week. Browns should, I would expect them to come out with a one heavy game plan, move the ball, use play action. This is also since Marshall Lattimore is gone, also a very bad secondary. I think that there will be ways for the Browns to attack them through the air. And if we don't get too many boneheaded Jameis Winston plays, I really think they are the better team in this one.
Hitman, you want to follow up on this?
Yeah, I agree with Suma. In my opinion, hashtag wrong team favored in this one. And a derivative that I bet was also, as I said, I'm against the Saints this week, but this opened at -110 to 120 earlier in the week. I still like it up to -150. I know that it's moved a little bit, but the Saints under 6.5 season wins is a bet that I made. Just to follow up on what Suma said, I mean, I just don't know if the market's fully captured how bad this roster is, from the defense now without Marshawn Lattimore to the offensive line being potentially bottom 3 in the league to the pass catchers being bottom 3 in the league. And I think that last week's result is just kind of masking how bad this team was. It was still a Saints team that allowed 500 yards of offense. They had a 37% success rate on offense. They allowed a 53% success rate on defense. That was a bigger gap than even the Jets and the Cardinals last week. I don't think that's sustainable to just have these shot plays to Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Like yet when it was Raheed Shaheed, sorry about that, for the Saints, I thought it was a little bit more sustainable. I mean, this Marquez Valdez-Scantling is a guy that had 3 touchdowns in 2 seasons from Patrick Mahomes. And so I don't think it's sustainable to keep doing that 2 touchdowns in a week from Derek Carr. So, and as Suma said, the pressure rate difference, I mean, this is a Browns team that's number 1 in pressure rate. They are still, even without Zadarius Smith, one of the best defensive lines in the league going up against one of the worst offensive lines, and Derek Carr has been sensitive to pressure throughout his career. So I agree that the wrong team's favored, in my opinion, and I am very anti-Saints in the future market this week.
I'm going to just jump in because Hitman still got the name wrong after five tries.
I know, brain fart.
Rashid Shaheed. I think XShesh makes a good point in the chat here. Yeah, Saints have a terrible O-line and wide receivers. They can't move the ball without shot plays. That's the biggest difference for me in this particular game. I'm not the alt king like Judah is here, but I actually think Browns alts are worth a look in this type of spot, along with just betting the Browns on the money line. All the points have been mentioned, but Atlanta last week has no pass rush to speak of. And when Carr has time, he can take those downfield shots with success. I just don't see that happening against the Cleveland Browns this week. Yes, you got to sweat Jameis, and that's going to be an experience and a true privilege, like Eric Eager used to say as well, a priv. But ultimately, I do think the wrong team is favored in this game. I'll piggyback with these guys and look at the Cleveland Browns in this spot. Speaking of the aforementioned Atlanta Falcons, they head out on the road again, back-to-back road games, taking on the Denver Broncos. By the way, the screen is lighting up during this show today. I don't know if people are, waiting for us getting their bets in before we go through in rotation number order here. What's happening? But lots of stuff happening. Broncos have taken one-way money, though, this week so far. A lot of that was Monday, where they got steamed out to 2.5, which is where we stand in this game. Total is at 44.5 at Fanduel, 44 across the board in other spots as well. So if you're looking to bet the under, you would look at this Fanduel price. We're going to go over to you here first, Hitman, in terms of the side you're liking one of these two teams.
Yeah, leaning towards Atlanta. Look, I'm not going to reference the look ahead from last week, but market ratings, like if this game was played last week, I have to believe that this game, market ratings wise, probably is at least pick 'em. I really didn't downgrade Atlanta after a dominant statistical performance against the Saints, where they had 500 yards of offense. And I mentioned earlier that the success rate differences between them and the Saints in that game as well. I'm just really confident that Atlanta is an average team. I understand that they're not as good as their record. I just think that they're a 0 or maybe a +0.5. And I just can't get there with Denver being equal to them, which is what the line essentially is saying in this one. Obviously, Denver deserved to win in Kansas City, despite Kansas City being poor in the red zone. But I upgraded them. But let's remember, they're 2 weeks removed from getting their doors blown off against Baltimore. Yes, Baltimore is going to do that to a lot of teams, but they're pretty consensus, like a below average market rating team. And I just have a hard time getting to this number. Like if it was Denver +1 or Denver -1 or something, where we say Atlanta's just slightly better on a neutral, I'd be fine with that. But I can't get to the point right now where we're essentially saying that Denver is an average team at the moment.
I think this is very matchup related. So definitely listen, anyone can bet into the market. And like Hitman said, I think if you're going like traditional power ratings or power rankings or anything, it's gonna be really hard for you to get to this price in the game. For me, I see a very big mismatch with the way that Denver can pass protect against this Atlanta Falcons defense. Like, we know that the Falcons can't generate a pass rush, but then when we look at the Denver offense, Garrett Bowles, their left tackle, in the last 4 weeks has not given up a pressure on 149 pass blocking snaps. Mike McGlinchey's back at right tackle. He has the 4th best pressure rate in the league, 2% at 150 pass block snaps in the last couple of weeks as well. I think Denver is going to move the ball in this game. I feel pretty confidently about that. I would take a look at some Denver team total overs. FanDuel is a sponsor of this program. I highly recommend you have a FanDuel account, but I do preach line shopping as well. The 44s that are out in market right now, I would take a look to the over there. I wouldn't go much past 44, which is a key number, but I do think the Broncos are going to be able to both run the ball and pass the ball in this game on a very weak Atlanta defensive front. On the other side, if you do get Kirk Cousins into a scenario where they're trailing, well, they'll move the ball through the air and they'll play fast in those types of situations as well. He's a smart quarterback. So to me, I think you either look at Denver team total over or the overall over in this game. Moving on here. Miami and Las Vegas. A little bit of Las Vegas steam across the market about 10 minutes ago while we were doing the show, as we are now at 7 across the board, -7, -115 at FanDuel. Some of the market making books a flat 7 right now. Total in the game, 44.5, juiced towards the under. What are you making of this line movement, Judah? How would you look at this game now?
I guess the people are really loving Desmond Ridder. I think Desmond Ridder is going to start this game. If you read between the lines, this has been, I think, something that the coaching staff has been hinting at for a couple of weeks. They got him in there a couple weeks ago, and I anticipate him starting, or at least there being a greater chance than the market is currently implying. Minshew was ruled the starter. Okay, little do I know, but maybe that's the steam. Either way, I still like the Dolphins here. I think that the offense has retained most of its kind of capability. They're doing it in a different way, where Tua Tagovailoa's depth of target is like 6, whereas in previous seasons it's been closer to 8 or 9. They're taking fewer deep shots, but there is still they are still extremely efficient. And the Raiders defense, the strength is their pass rush. They are second in quick pressure rate, even over the last 5-6 games. That is mitigated entirely by Dolphins offense, which passes in 2.3 seconds, leaving this defense much more vulnerable, I think, than kind of the whole season numbers. I do not think this is a Vegas team that is going to be able to sustain much offense. We saw the Dolphins pass rush is a strength of theirs. They should be able to create some havoc for Minshew at quarterback. I think these teams are in different tiers, and especially considering how the Dolphins can mitigate the effect of the Raiders matchup, they can certainly win with margin. I like them at 7.
I have some thoughts on this game, and they're related to maybe some non-household names here, but the names would be Colton Miller, Andrus Peat, Cody Whitehair, Andre James. That's center, left guard, and 2 left tackles for the Las Vegas Raiders, all of whom are dealing with injuries heading into this week. I know people want to give the Raiders an offensive bump for the bye week and for Luke Getsy not being there anymore, but I mean, you got to watch this situation and see how this plays out over the course of the week, because I don't even know who will play left tackle for the Raiders if Colton Miller and Andrus Peat are out. I figure they'd move Thayer Munford over from the right side to the left. They've done that before, didn't work out well. I think Delmar Glaze would start at right tackle. That would be catastrophic. And this is a Raiders team that has basically said they want to run the ball more than they already have. Well, the running game doesn't work for these guys. It hasn't all season long. I don't know how that's going to change against a Dolphins front that got Zach Sealer back last week. Sealer and Calais Campbell on the inside have been a really good combo this year. So I'm really monitoring this situation right now, because it's getting to the point where I think Miami might be worth the play, even at the current market price, if this offensive situation plays out the way that I think it's going to play out. All right. Game of the week. Bills Chiefs. Nothing more to be said. These teams have been playing each other a lot over the last few years. There's a pretty big rivalry here, even though they are outside of the division. All the early money in this game is on Buffalo. Buffalo now out to -2.5, -105 at Fanduel, -2.5 flat at some market making sports books right now. Total's a little bit all over the place. 46.5 at Fanduel. If you do like the under, this would be the spot to bet it right now. Let's start with Suma on this game. KC Buffalo. Is it as simple as Mahomes is an underdog?
13-1-1 ATS as an underdog. But other than that, it's hard for me to pass on KC 2.5 in this one. I would be more optimistic about the Bills if they had their full arsenal of weapons in this one. But this might or could be the week where their lack of pass catchers might catch up to them against this Chiefs defense. Nokia and Coleman. Dalton Kincaid might miss this game. DNP today. Rumors about a PCL injury. Amari Cooper was limited in their walkthrough today, and he still had a small cast on that wrist. So he might end up playing. I don't know whether he's going to be at 100% when he did not catch passes or balls at practice last week. And Spencer Brown, their right tackle, might also be 50-50 to play. Don't think that backup Ryan von Denmark is considered a equal quality. I think he has to be a downgrade. And I think this might finally catch up to them against the Chiefs. The Bills are very, very decent at running the ball. KC defense, second in rushing success rate against runs, 13 EPA per play. If they take away the one game, I think this might finally be the week for as good as Josh Allen and this offense has been, where they might struggle. And yeah, I mean, on the other side, it's Mahomes, success rating opposing on defenses to death. Bills also a small step down in class compared to the Broncos defense last week. I think they should just do enough. 2.5, I just cannot pass on KC.
Hitman, you have some thoughts here as well.
Yeah, I feel like these are kind of like Buffalo has kind of built their team a little bit similar to Kansas City in the way of like they're both well-coached teams, both have good defenses, they both have no real game-breaking weapons, and they both have quarterbacks who they're asking to now carry these teams. And I just think that the difference is that Kansas City's better at all those things. They have the better defense, they have the better weapons, specifically towards this week, where Buffalo is the team that has cluster injuries to their pass catchers. Dalton Kincaid is probably unlikely, I'd say, to play in this game. Keon Coleman is out. Amari Cooper, the latest we've seen from him is that he's practicing limited, but he's in non-contact drills and he's just running routes against air, doing footwork. So does he get healthy for Sunday? I don't think it's a guarantee. And then to follow up on what I was saying earlier, then it's the team with the better quarterback, obviously, as well. So I just think that they're similar built teams, except Kansas City's better. And like if this line came in at like Buffalo -1 or something, where we said, all right, but Kansas City's the slightly better team, they're small underdogs at like +1, I would get that. But at the point that it's at now, at +2.5, you're almost saying that Buffalo is at least equal, possibly a half point better than Kansas City. And they're the team that has the injuries to their playmakers and Spencer Brown at tackle. So yeah, 2 for 2. I lean towards Kansas City in this one.
All right. I know we all wanted to talk about this game, so I'm curious if we're all going to align or not. Judah, it's on you now.
Yeah, I like Buffalo here. I think I'm certainly sympathetic to all the Mahomes arguments, and he has not played as well this season, but we have a very large sample of what Mahomes is, and I would almost trust that a little bit more than what we've seen so far this season. But with all that said, I think that you want to talk about kind of non-household names. The Chiefs lost cornerback Jalen Watson in Week 7 against the 49ers. Jalen Watson, by my numbers, was a top 5 cornerback in football. He was terrific both before the catch and at the catch point. And he's been replaced by Najee Johnson, who has been the single worst cornerback by my numbers. And the results in the past 3 games, they have not exactly faced the greatest of offenses. Their pass EPA allowed against Vegas was 0.12. That was Vegas's best game of the season. Against Tampa Bay with no receivers was 0.17. It's the best in the non-Evans Godwin games, but I don't think that sample really matters. 0.17, not a great number. And then last week, Denver had their second best pass EPA game, 0.13. You can kind of stack it up however you'd like. This is not as good a pass defense as they've been earlier in the season. And I really would not discount the injury to Jalen Watson. With all that said, I do think that the Bills are dealing with some weapons issues, as Suma mentioned, but that's not a great phrase. But at the end of the day, yes, wide receivers matter, but to a quarterback like Josh Allen, I think it matters a little bit less than someone else. And certainly given his ability to extend plays and create should kind of help to mitigate that slightly, though I do anticipate Amari Cooper being back. And that would certainly make a difference. I think this is a Bills offense that can score, and I think the market is pricing in a bit too much residual of what the Kansas City pass defense was before some of these injuries. On the flip side of the ball, everyone's talked about kind of how Kansas City's done a little bit differently this year. They have an extremely high success rate. They're doing it on the backs of a run game. This has been a Bills run defense that's been terrific. Yes, Jonathan Taylor had a huge run. We shouldn't discount that. But from a success rate perspective, which is what this angle I think is, they've been one of the best in the league, and certainly so over the last 5-6 weeks as they've gotten healthier. And I think that it is a different style of play. Mahomes can play hero ball, of course. That wouldn't be shocking at all. But it certainly, I think, will take Kansas City out of the ways they are most comfortable playing offense this season. Add it all up, I think the market's kind of pricing in a bit too much of the Mahomes magic, and like the fundamentals make sense. But this is a different Chiefs defense than what we saw earlier this season, and I don't think the offense matches up particularly well against this Bills team.
I'm going to give more thoughts on this one later on in the show. Spoiler alert. But like comments like this, Chiefs are the worst 9-0 team in the history of the NFL. I mean, did we not watch the Steelers 5 years ago with the corpse of Ben Roethlisberger parading around there? The Chiefs had a worse 9-0 team like a decade ago as well. There's so many worse. And like they have arguably the best quarterback. Listen, you could say Tom Brady's won. Everyone, most people argue Tom Brady's won. But Mahomes will be pushing that by the end of his career. I don't understand those arguments. I know the point differential. I get the point differential. And believe me, I'd like to see KC win by more points generally, but I'm nowhere near that right now. Nowhere near that comment. The game that got flexed out of Sunday Night Football, thankfully, is the Colts and the Jets. Interesting market moves on this game this week. Early money was on the Jets. This thing opened up as -3. I talked about this with Clive on Sunday Night Football, where I thought that was short, but ultimately would have trouble getting myself on the Jets just because of how bad they have been. Market went up to 4. We got the Anthony Richardson news earlier today as well. Some Colts buyback, and then more money on the Jets in the last hour. It's been all over the place. We sit here now, Jets -3.5, -120. Total in the game, 43.5, juiced to the under. Hitman, what are you doing here, Colts and Jets?
Yeah, so admittedly, I bet the Colts after the Anthony Richardson news, and that line got shoved right back in my face as I bet Indy +3.5, and it got steamed the other way shortly after. So there's some people that definitely disagree with me on this game, but I have some questions about the Jets. The later we get into the season, what the effort level continues to be like. And I really never do this, but it's a Jets team that's 3-7 now. And we're getting to this is a team that had Super Bowl aspirations. It's obviously not going to happen. What is the fight that we see in this team week in and week out? One of the first things that typically goes for teams that there's those questions about is the tackling. Last week against the Cardinals, the Jets missed 20 tackles, which was the most for any team this entire season. I think that Joe Flacco getting replaced is an upgrade for the Colts. If you watched that game last week against Buffalo, and obviously everyone watched the Minnesota game, he was awful. A lot of people pointed to his metrics against the blitz. If you play a team that didn't blitz, he'd do better. Buffalo really doesn't blitz. Flacco probably should have thrown 5-6 picks in that game. This was going to be a really difficult game for the Colts to throw anyway. I think that Richardson brings a big spark to the Colts run game against the Jets run defense that is 26th in rush defense EPA per play and 27th in rush defense success rate. It's a short sample size, but Jonathan Taylor this year, 76 carries, 5.2 yards per carry with Richardson, 50 carries without Richardson, 4.4 yards per carry. But I think that it's true because it's just known that typically these running games do better when they have the mobile quarterback like an Anthony Richardson in the backfield. So I think that could be a positive matchup upgrade for the Colts in this game. And it's basically me just saying that I think that Anthony Richardson is an upgrade, especially specific to this matchup. So I made this game closer to 3. So I like the Colts +4 now in this game.
Suma, on to you here.
Basically the exact same thoughts as Hitman also on the Colts. The Jets, despite me not getting to the difference in the market pricing between these two teams, the Jets defense was bad this season. But especially since the Salah firing, aside of they cannot tackle penalties and stuff like that, they rank 30th in rushing success rate, 30th in rushing EPA per play, 15th in passing success rate, but 29th in EPA per play. So they cannot stop the run and they give up big plays through the air. And that's basically the Colts offense with Anthony Richardson this week. And on the other side, the Jets offense has been average at best. There's not a lot of variance with them, and I still don't think they will suddenly get explosives. Tyron Smith might be easy to play, left with a neck injury. Whatever the opposing defense is, it doesn't seem to really matter because the Jets are doing the same over and over again. And it's basically just Aaron Rodgers, whether he can get the ball out quick and someone can make a play either on a fadeaway down the field or a quick slant or something. And if those things are not clicking, they are simply not moving the ball that well. Then they have a lot of mistakes last week in the red zone. Granted, they were not bad on offense, but they just stalled in the red zone. But it's also not that they have been much more efficient over the course of the season. I just think the Colts are not that far away from the Jets. I think they can hang here, they can run the ball, and this might be a close game.
I have one big concern with the Colts this week, and Bernard Raymond didn't practice today. So you're potentially looking at Matt Goncalves, left tackle, Tanner Bortolini, center, Dalton Tucker, right guard. And this is just not the same offensive line as it was earlier on in the year. And listen, what I think the questions about the Jets and what the motivations are for that team right now are real. I think it's fair to ask those, but I cannot get behind the Colts offense if they're going to be starting 3 rookies on the offensive line this week against what was considered to be a strength at the beginning of the year for the New York Jets, which is their defensive line. Potentially with Tyron Smith out, I would look towards the under in this game, but a buy point would be, I think, 44 as well. And Michael Pittman, full participant as well in practice today. Thank you, Patrick, for that update as well. Monday Night Football, final game we'll talk about today before we get to our best bets. It's the Houston Texans. It's the Dallas Cowboys. Nico Collins is actually going to play this week. Not like what the Twitter doctors told you last week when he wasn't going to play. He's playing Monday Night Football, barring a setback. Texans laying 7.5 on the road. Total in the game, 42.5. Judah, you're thinking about playing one of the sides here.
Yeah, the Dallas getting back Micah Parsons gives me the slightest bit of hesitation here, considering the Houston offensive line has been pretty much a disaster for the last month of the season. And that also goes to CJ Stroud holding the ball for too long. But this is still an offense that I think is going to have success. Nico Collins is perhaps more important to any team. Let me say that again. Nico Collins is perhaps the most important wide receiver to any team, I think, in the NFL. And I think that we saw just how underrated he was and the effect that he has on this offense when he was out. He is by all stretches an elite NFL receiver, and the production with him on the field is sure to increase on this spot. It's a Dallas defense that, even with Parsons back, is a disaster on defense. They can't stop the run, though they did a fine job with that last week. And they also have some major issues in the secondary. They're allowing the most separation of any team in the league. On the flip side, we know what Cooper Rush is. He's not good. This is a Houston defense that's been one of the best in the league. I don't see how this is a team that's going to sustain any success. They still have the same problems with that we were talking about earlier this season, of no guy to generate any separation outside of CeeDee Lamb, no run game to speak of. The offensive line's been bad. They just don't have Dak Prescott to kind of hide some of these flaws. There's a reason that Cooper Rush threw for like 45 yards last week. And while that's not likely to repeat itself, it I think is directionally true. Houston, I think, should be able to score at will against a Dallas D, and I'm not sure how Dallas is going to keep up on the other side.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I love Houston as a teaser leg this week. I think that goes without saying. I think they have a very high probability of winning the game, but Dallas seems to command like some market respect every week for some reason or another, or at least somebody's willing to bet them, and these numbers never get out of hand. If this 7.5 gets pushed down and you could potentially get a -7 in the -115 range, I'm very interested in Houston. Dallas's offense last week had 49 net yards passing on 26 pass attempts. They had 2.6 yards per play as an offense, 33% success rate. Cooper Rush is starting again. McCarthy said that a couple days ago. This is a disaster of a team that can't do anything right. If you're betting the 7.5, you need their defense to step up. You might as well just play the under in the game, which also might be a fine look. But I do think Nico Collins will change things for the Texans. They're still going to do their stupid early down running, but Collins will give them some success on third down because he can stretch the field, and he's just such a viable route runner. You look at his EPA, numbers from a season ago and earlier this year. I think that's a monumental add for that offense. So very strong lean to Houston here as well. Okay, we're going to get into our best bets here. Whether you're following or fading, I don't care, really. It's your prerogative. You do whatever you want to do. But we're going to give them out regardless. And we're going to look for a bounce back this week. Suma, we're going same order as last week because nobody won. So you lead us off. Best bet for this week. What's it going to be and why?
I'm going with the Browns. I think this is my strongest look at current market price. I absolutely like this matchup. As Hitman mentioned, maybe I am too low on the Saints. Maybe the market is not pricing incorrectly yet how bad this Saints roster is. I think the Browns top to bottom overall are a much better roster right now. And if we don't get the 4 or 5 dump James Winston boneheaded plays, I think this should be a very, very good spot for the Browns. Worst matchup of the week, in my opinion, the Saints O-line against the Browns pass rush, and the Saints wide receivers against that Browns secondary. And if they don't get their 2 big plays for a 120 yards down the field to Marcus Valdes-Scantling, I just don't see how the Saints move the ball. And granted, I'm not high on the Browns offense by any stretch, but the Saints defense is really, really bad. And I think the Browns will just have enough on offense by running the ball well and maybe let James do a little bit off of that.
All right. That's going to be Suma. I'm up next. Before I get into my best bet really quickly, Nothing But Facts says, why no Niners Seahawks? We only talk about games that we have an opinion on. So we discussed these before the show, but no one here feels very strongly about anything going on in that game. So don't want to waste your time by just discussing it and not giving anything out. I don't think the chat is going to like this. I don't care. Give me the Chiefs money line plus 114. I don't want to, this isn't just blindly bet Mahomes as a dog, although I really, really love those types of spots. 29 games of a dog to -2.5 expected to win 47% of those games. He's won 21 of 29 outright. That's 72.4%, 25% more than expected. 23-6 ATS in those games, 30% over expected. All this guy does is win, and people galaxy brain themselves into betting against him regularly. Buffalo's a solid team, but Keon Coleman out. As of now, Amari Cooper and Dalton Kincaid, both threats to miss the game. I believe Dalton Kincaid will miss. I think Amari Cooper will play. That's my best guess, and I can't get to this number. Then you have the right tackle, Spencer Brown. He commented today, he's dealing with an ankle injury. He's got a lot of swelling. He did not sound super confident about playing. The only other healthy tackle on the roster is Ryan Van DeMark, undrafted out of UConn. He would be blocking George Karlaftis on the outside. Disaster waiting to happen. Meanwhile, everyone practiced for the Chiefs today, including their left tackle, Wanya Morris, who I'm watching because the backup there is a disaster. Juju Smith-Schuster practiced as well. One last thing in regards to why the Chiefs always get it done. 3rd and longs for these two teams. Patrick Mahomes has a 45% success rate on 3rd and 7+ this year. There's only one other quarterback more than 40%. It's Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen is at 33%. It's a big difference in keeping your team on the field. They just find ways to get it done. I don't agree with the price. I think Kansas City is the better team. I think they have a decent matchup when you look at the injuries in this game as well. Give me the Chiefs on the money line. I'm sorry, Ekshesh. I get your points as well. Cannot get there. Hitman, over to you. What's it going to be and why?
Cleveland Browns also. Cleveland's the healthiest they've been all season, specifically on the offensive line. I don't think the market has fully captured how terrible the Saints roster is, from defense to offensive line to pass catchers. Speaking of the offensive line, it's one of the biggest mismatches of the entire week, with the Browns defense that, even without Zadarius Smith and Brandon Thorne, have established to run good rankings, are good, has a good mind for offensive and defensive line play. Still has the Cleveland Browns as his 3rd ranked defensive line, going against the Saints offensive line that is ranked 30th and still without Eric McCoy. We know that Derek Carr has been one of the most pressure sensitive quarterbacks in the league. The Saints defense, again, allowed 500 yards of offense last week. Got pretty fortunate to win that game against Atlanta. I think that it's driving some of the price in this one to where the Saints are now slight favorites, where I just think wrong team favorite in this one. So give me Cleveland money line -102.
I love the faith that we built up in the chat. Browns are cooked beyond belief.
I do believe that Suma and I are undefeated on double ups.
It's
I
true.
think we're like 2-0 or 3-0 all time. So
you guys are. I can confirm, regards from Canada, I can confirm that Suma and Hitman, when they are paired up, Suma and Judah, when they pair up, their team loses by like 48 points in a game, like the Jets did last week. We'll try to get the 2-0 and get us back into things. Judah, ended off here. Best bet. I know you're going alt line. It's your MO. Who's going to be the team this week?
Yeah, went with the Jets last week. It was a good lesson. Honestly, I had a very hard time. If Washington was on the board, that would be an extremely appealing option. And I was really having a tough time debating between the Bills alts and the Ravens alts. But I'm going to go with the Ravens alts -9.5. I believe we're getting 235 there. And I think this is a case where the Ravens are going to be able, or should be able, to stop the run. And for the Steelers to keep up with the Ravens offensive juggernaut, I think they are going to need to continue to rely on some explosive plays, and that's just not a sustainable way of running their offense. The market's pricing in a Steelers defense, which has by all accounts been terrific. They're dealing with injuries. I'm not sure that matters against the Ravens, considering Lamar Jackson's style of play and just how good they've been. I don't see this as a spot where Pittsburgh's going to be able to keep up.
All right. That's going to do it for this week's show. Wraps up our Week 11 best bets. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like the content, remember to hit the like button down below and subscribe to Forward Progress on YouTube. Let's get us to 10K subs by the end of the year. Make sure you click that subscribe button. You can also catch us weekly on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. And of course, drop your thoughts and picks in the comments. We love hearing from you. I read through them every single week. So drop your thoughts and picks in the comments as well. For myself, Rob Pizzola, for Judah Fortgang, for Suma, for Hitman, for our producer, Jason Cooper, behind the scenes. Best of luck on your bets. And remember, as always, please bet responsibly as well. We'll see you next time back here on Forward Progress. Peace out.